Welcome to Classroom TV. Today I am going to talk about an interesting topic, that is microorganism. Is it a friend or is it a foe? So what do you guys think about microorganisms? So can you guys name some of the microorganisms that you come across in day-to-day life? In the current situation, the microorganism that's everyone in this world are talking about is coronavirus. Right. So before I tell you why am I saying a virus is a microorganism, I would just like to give you a brief introduction that microorganisms are divided into different types like bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae and virus. So virus is a type of microorganisms. Okay. So what do you think about this slide? I can see my favorite yogurt, milk and yogurt or dahi here, and here I can see Chota Bheem, who is like wearing a mask, protecting himself, whereas few people are sneezing, touching the doorknobs with the same hand and shaking hands and transmitting the virus. So in this slide, who is a friend and who is the enemy? Of course, coronavirus is like the biggest enemy that we can ever imagine, but do you guys like bread, cake and all these stuff? And let me tell you an interesting fact. To make your favorite cake, to bake bread or anything, you need microorganisms. So microorganisms can be your friend and sometimes it can be the biggest enemy. It can be such a biggest enemy like it can kill you, right? Like what coronavirus is doing to everyone around us. So in order to stop the spread of the coronavirus, always wear the mask and sanitize yourself. Okay? Now, the strange, beautiful and powerful world of microbes. What do I mean by that? It's strange that some microbes are really harmful, whereas some microbes are really beneficial for us. So here, coronavirus is really harmful. It's so deadly that, and before I get deeper, let me tell you something interesting about coronavirus. So suppose think if this is coronavirus and is just here, okay, it can't really do anything, like it can't do anything on its own. It needs to affect a host in order to live, okay. So almost similar to what I have explained in my previous classes about parasite, like this virus is dead on its own, but when it comes into a host, it becomes like it is able to replicate and then it spreads from one person to another. So virus is crazy. Like what do I mean that virus is crazy? That it can't really live on its own, but then when it infects someone, it's going to really cause a big disaster. Okay. Now here there is a bread slice. So let me ask you guys a question. You might have your favorite cake or like a piece of bread that you really like and you want to eat it forever. It always happens, right? My favorite is chocolate cake. So I thought like let me keep it in the fridge and you know it's going to be good. It's not like it's going to be good forever, okay? If you keep something in fridge for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, fine, but after a period of time, microorganisms are going to destroy it completely, and when you eat it, you'll end up throwing up or like you'll have a stomach upset or you'll have a food poisoning. So microorganisms can destroy your favorite cake also. So whenever you have any food, eat it fresh and finish it off right away, okay? Here, this bread piece, slice of bread was left out for few days. Even you should do this experiment just to see what is the thing. You find a mold, right? Like on top of the bread when you leave it open. What is that? So what am I really trying to tell you guys is engage yourself in learning these things through real examples. Like look around you. Everything is like science. Explore yourself, and if you are like interested in knowing things, you will learn better and I can help you learn better with that. So I hope you got a understanding, not a deeper understanding, but in general, what are microorganisms and like which are the good ones and which are definitely the bad ones, right? So, who is the first microbiologist and his microscope? So, Anton von Leeuwenhoek, we discussed about this scientist in my earlier class, that he was the first one to discover the cells in a living thing. Okay, Robert Hooke was the first one to coin the name as cells, but he found out in the dead cork cells, like dead cork. So, he's the first scientist, he's a microbiologist who actually found out the living cells. And not just that, he is the first one who discovered bacteria. So, he is the first one who discovered the bacteria. And by wanting better magnifying lens with which to judge the quality of the cloth he was buying, Leeuwenhoek discovered bacteria. Actually, it's an interesting story. He wanted to buy a cloth, and to buy a cloth, like why did he need a magnifying lens, and how did he end up like making his own microscope is, he wanted to check the quality. So what a microscope really does, it gives you a big picture, like a small thing can look so huge in a microscope, as well as it will give you a more clearer picture. Okay, so he wanted to have a clearer picture of the cloth that he wants to buy, like of the cloth. So that was the reason he made his microscope. And after doing so, he discovered bacteria also after discovering the microscope. Okay, so if anyone asks you who is the first microbiologist and his microscope, it's Anton von Leeuwenhoek. Okay, so what do microbiologists do? So look at the term microbiologist. Okay, so the scientists who study microbiology in general, like who study about microbes, are called microbiologists. Okay, so, and let me tell you an interesting thing, like a single microbiologist can't cover everything. Like he can't really know about bacteria, virus, fungi, everything in detail. Like he'll definitely have a broader idea, he or she will have a broader idea, but there are few people who just study bacteria. There are few people who just study fungi. There are few people who just study protozoa. There are few people who only study about the outbreaks. Like right now, the biggest outbreak, the pandemic, is coronavirus, right? Once upon a time, it was Spanish flu, plague, smallpox, and all of it. So there are a group of scientists who study just that. Okay, so no one microbiologist can study everything. That's why people who become microbiologists usually focus on a single particular microbe. Like bacteriologists study bacteria, virologists specialize in virus, mycologists study fungi, epidemiologists track down the outbreak of the diseases. Okay, and immunologists study how the body defends itself against invaders. Like for example, immunology means basically if there is, I have a flu, okay, or I have a throat infection. So immunologists actually study about the causes, like what is causing it and how my body is going to produce something to fight the infection back. So immunology study everything about that. So basically that's about different groups of scientists who study what. And let me tell you an interesting fact. These microorganisms are not just about coronavirus, it's not just about your favorite cake, it's not just about your dahi. Basically, microbes, let me tell you an interesting fact about microbes. Microbes exist in such a huge quantity that you can't even imagine. Okay, and it is used in different like industries. It's not just used in food, it's used in pharmaceutical industries for making medicines, it's used to make wine, it's used to make alcohol by a process called as fermentation, which I'll be talking later. And it's also used in education, government agencies. Imagine, like these scientists do such an amazing job. Like, what is meant by use of microbiology in research means, for example, right now coronavirus is a huge pandemic situation which is going on, and definitely doctors and like different people are helping it, helping different patients, helping us protect from the disease, but microbiologists are the one who's going to study in detail, work along with the doctor and develop a vaccine. So without microbiologists, we wouldn't really have vaccines for various diseases. Now, what is this on the screen that you see? This is a microscope. And why do we need a microscope? We need microscope to look in have a clear picture, like to magnify the object as well as take a deeper look in it. Okay. And why do we need a microscope right now? Most of the microbes are not visible to the naked eye. We need a microscope to see a microbe. That's why it is called microorganism. Micro means small and organism is an organism. Okay, so I really hope you guys know what is organism, that I don't have to go in detail to really break everything in detail. So we need a microscope to observe microbes. Okay. So an organism that is too small to be seen clearly with the naked eye is called as microorganism. Okay. Generally they are single cells, but they can occur in clusters also. Okay. Now, never underestimate the power of a microorganism. Now, what do I mean? Look at this. Microbes are always at work. Mind it. Like, you can't just say that microorganism is so small. Can it really affect me? There are different microorganisms that are killing humans right now. There are different microorganisms affecting us in a very bad way because they divide so rapidly that you can't really stop the growth of it. Okay. So that's why they are always at work. So we should be careful of the microbes actually. So in 100% of the total microbial population, only 3% is useful to our humans. Okay, so it means 97% is actually deadly. Without knowing, we are getting their help from historic days. Like we make curd at our home, right? Dahi or yogurt or whatever you call it. So we need microbes in order to make a curd. We need lactobacillus, which is a microbe. And how come the pickles taste so good? Like, you all must be loving pickles, right? And how come it stays in a dabba, like in a box, for a year? Whereas if you try to keep an apple for a year, do you know what happens? It's going to rot, it's going to smell so bad, and it's going to cause you a lot of diseases also. So please don't try it. I'm just giving you an example that why do you think we can store a pickle, but why can't we store normal food? Like, why can't we store rice forget about storing rice for 1 year, cook rice. If you try to store for more than 2 days, it's going to stink. So, but there are things like milk, pickles, jams, and wine, because people say wine tastes better, like depends on, like a 100-year-old wine has more of value than a recently made wine. Why is it so? So it is because these all things are happening because of the help of microbes. Okay, so some microbes help in food to get better food, whereas some microbes really destroy the food. Now coming to the world's largest organism. This is the world's largest organism. It is not an elephant, or it is not a giant huge whale, like, or a shark or a dinosaur. As a kid, I have always thought that a dinosaur is the huge thing, a huge living, huge, like it doesn't exist anymore. So whenever I used to see dinosaur movies, I used to like be mesmerized by the way it looks. Like the fossil used to look so big, and when I went to a museum and I saw it, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so huge. I've never seen anything so huge. But you know what? Even that is not the world's huge organism. It's not world's largest organism. It's actually a fungus. Yes, you might be thinking like, this fungus just looks like a regular mushroom that I would be eating for breakfast. No, there are few mushrooms that are edible, there are few mushrooms that are poisonous, okay? And the mushrooms which we eat are called as honey mushrooms. So, the world's largest organism is actually a mushroom, which is a fungus, and it is found in Michigan forests, okay? So, if someone asks you, which is the world's largest organism, is it an elephant? It's not so, it is a fungus. Now, living in the life in the extremes, let me tell you something. These microbes can actually live in extreme conditions. It can live in a desert, it can live in the sea, it can live like, you know something, when as humans, if I try to expose myself to a radiation beyond a certain limit, I'm going to die. But microorganisms can actually withstand that. So what am I trying to tell you guys is, microorganisms can actually withstand extreme conditions, extreme heat, extreme cold. They can survive even in like harsh conditions. So they are really smart. Now, strange facts about that. Microbes thrive in an amazing diversity of habitats in the extremes of heat, cold, radiation, pressure, acidity, salinity, darkness, and often where no other life forms could exist. We can't even imagine ourselves in such extreme conditions, but microbes can really withstand that, and they keep on doing their work. They're always active. So imagine if this diver is going to jump in like a ocean which is like as hot as a volcano, he would be dead, right? But here, microbes can definitely survive. So that's what I'm trying to tell you guys, like what is the difference, like the existence in harsh conditions. Now, coming to type of microorganisms. So the main division of microorganisms is, first is bacteria, protozoa, fungi, algae, and virus, okay? So we'll talk about each of one in detail. And now coming to bacteria. So bacteria can occur in different shape. It can be a round shape like a ball, it can be rod shaped, it can be spiral shaped, it can occur in like little rectangle shape. So this is Staphylococcus and this is Streptococcus. Streptococcus is a bacteria that causes like throat infection, which is contagious. Like when you cough on someone or something, the droplets go from your mouth and they fall on like non-living surfaces. And not just that, if suppose a person is standing next to me and I'm just coughing, my droplets, if they fall on that person and it enters their system, it's going to harm that person. So that is what is meant by contagious. Contagious means spread, okay? So Streptococcus causes throat infection. Now coming to protozoa, okay? So there are two classes of protozoa and they are divided based on their cell architecture as well as their motility and even host. So let me tell you something very interesting about a protozoan. So protozoans can be divided even based on their locomotion, that is their motility, okay? Examples, few of the examples are amoeba, paramecium, and you know what? Do you know malaria? Like malaria is a disease, people think like it's caused by just a mosquito. No. Malaria is actually a fever and it's caused not with the mosquito. It's caused by the bite of a mosquito which is infected with a protozoan, that is Plasmodium vivax, okay? So these organisms, they do not undergo photosynthesis, rather they are chemoheterotrophic. Now, what do I mean by they can't make their own food? Means they don't have chlorophyll and they can't make their own food, okay, unlike plants. But they use chemicals for energy production and get the carbon from the same compounds, that is sugar. Like heterotrophic means these organisms are going to depend on other animals, other organisms for their food. and also they are going to take help from the chemicals that is coming from the food, that is like sugar. So that is what is meant by chemoheterotrophs, that is they depend on others for their food, and the examples are amoeba and paramecium, chlamydomonas and plasmodium vivax also. Now these all are the different examples. So this is euglena, this is chlamydomonas, this is amoeba, this is paramecium. So now coming to fungi. So fungi, what do you notice in this slide about fungi? I can notice my favorite mushroom. So but let me tell you something guys, all the mushrooms that you see are not edible. Please don't try them. So only few of the mushrooms grown in a particular way are edible. Most of the mushrooms like grow in wet conditions and damp weather and like a moist temperature. Okay, so be careful. So these are heterotrophs, that is they cannot make their own food. Okay, they are multicellular and eukaryotic organisms. It means that they are not single cell, they are multi-cells and they are eukaryotes. Eukaryotes means they have well-defined cell organelles. Okay, so what you need to remember about fungi is they are usually multicellular and they are heterotrophs. Okay, that is they cannot make their own food. Now coming to algae. Now, do you guys notice when you go to beach on the rocks, there is some green color slimy structure. I was always curious to know what it is. So it is actually algae, like this thing which I am talking about. Here, the green like grass like thing, but it is only seen in like wet places like ponds or beaches. So when you go next time to a beach, try to notice the algae over there. So algae can be found in a wide range of environments such as moist soil, salt water, moist rock and fresh water. Good examples are seaweed and pond scum and giant kelp. These organisms can occur as single cell or multicellular organisms, and there are 7 types of algae based on different types of pigmentation and food reserves. So what you guys need to remember from this slide about algae is it is green in color, it is present in moist conditions. Remember the diagram like picture of beach in your head. So it is present like in ponds, in beaches, so basically wherever it is completely wet. Okay, and these can be unicellular or can be multicellular also, and they are of 7 types. Now I have an interesting question for you guys. Earlier in my class about like whenever I was telling about photosynthesis, I have always said that whenever a plant has green colored pigment called chlorophyll, they can make their own food with the help of photosynthesis. Now, can algae make its own food? Yes, it can, because it has chlorophyll. Okay. Now coming to virus. Virus when left alone outside is useless, but when it enters a human, it's deadly. Like HIV causes AIDS, right? This HIV virus, if it just occurs outside, it's fine. But when it infects a human or an animal, it's going to destroy the complete immunity of the person and ultimately lead to death. Now the current virus which everyone are talking about is coronavirus. So coronavirus by itself is not deadly. Okay, when it infects, it causes SARS, that is, it causes a respiratory syndrome, respiratory illness, where it is somewhat similar to pneumonia, where it infects your lungs and it later it's going to, that's the reason why you must be seeing on TV that many of the coronavirus affected patients are on ventilators because their respiratory tract is completely destroyed. Okay, so coronavirus, if it's just outside, it doesn't affect you. But if you don't sanitize, if you don't wear a mask and you just keep going and touching everything and going and going to crowded places, that virus, when it infects, is going to cause respiratory illness. So remember a fact about virus. Virus is actually useless. It's going to harm us only and only when infected. Okay? Now, viruses are metabolically inert and are incapable of reproducing independently of a host cell. So if there is no host cell, then there won't be any viral replication. They typically consist of an inner core of nucleic acid surrounded by a protein coat. So they typically have inner coat surrounded by a protein coat. These are the protein spikes which you can see, and this is the inner layer. Okay. Now, I have some questions for you guys. So, what do scientists use in order to see microorganisms? So, do they use a telescope? Do they use magnifying glasses? Do they use a microscope, or do they use glasses? Think about it. Telescope is actually used to see stars, right? Whereas magnifying glass is something which will just help you magnify. Like if this pen is small, it will help me give a larger picture. It's the microscope that scientists use. Okay. Now, what is the one way that bacteria can be helpful? So, they live on spoiled food. Is it helpful for us? They can make us sick. They help to break down dead leaves in soil. They like to eat tasty foods. So, which one is helpful? Think about it. I'll give you a few seconds and then I'll answer anyways, but then still think about it. So, what do you think these microorganisms are going to be useful? So, when they live on spoiled food, it's going to cause us diseases. We can't eat food that is like sadawa, like we can't eat food that's spoiled, right? We can't, they make us sick. So, if it's causing us sickness, we have stomach upset or like vomiting, it's not good. They like to eat tasty foods. See, microorganisms are basically saprophytes. Now, what do I mean by saprophytes? Saprophytes means, suppose this is my strawberry, okay, or my cake, which I left. I forgot to keep it inside the refrigerator and I left it. Next day when I see it stings, because this microorganism, when it feeds on this cake, it eats all the tasty things and excretes the waste. So, it is going to digest the good contents and release some bad waste substance. So, that waste substance is the smell that we get. Okay. So, of course, they like to eat tasty foods, but it's going to cause a weird smell and it is not no more edible for us. Now, they help to break down dead leaves in the soil. Let me tell you an interesting story about microbes. Microbes are very much important because they are not just causing us harm. Like they are there on grass, they are there inside the stomach of a cow, they are there in humans. And when humans or animals or plants are dead, these microorganisms feed on them and they help them in decomposition. That is, they make sure that, imagine if microbes don't exist, whichever animals or humans or anything is dead will just be there. It is going into the soil and it's going to be used as nutrients with the help of microbes. So, microbes are doing a great job by actually decomposing all the dead material. Okay. Now, which of the following are not microorganisms? Is yeast a microorganism? Yes. Is Streptococcus a microorganism? Yes. Is mold a microorganism? Yes. Are ants microorganisms? No. Which of the following is true? So, whenever there is a statement like true or false, try to read the same line 3 to 4 times so that it's easy for you guys to relate to it. Microbes are not living organisms. No, I have explained earlier that microbes can be living or they are definitely living. So, some microorganisms are beneficial. Yes, because if they say microorganisms are beneficial, then it's a false statement because Some microorganisms are really harmful, but some are beneficial. All microorganisms are dangerous to humans. No, few microorganisms are dangerous to humans, but few of them are really useful. Microorganisms are used in medicine. So, let me tell you an interesting fact which I'll explain later. Suppose we get an infection. The doctor might prescribe you like take an antibiotic for so many days and you'll be okay, right? That antibiotic which you're taking in has penicillin sometimes, and that is actually a microorganism. Isn't it interesting that microorganisms are used in medicines also? So, which is true? Microorganisms are used in medicines, it's a true. All microorganisms are dangerous to humans is false. Some microorganisms are beneficial is true. Microbes are not living organisms is a false statement. So, these two statements are true. That is, some microorganisms are beneficial and some microorganisms are used in medicines. Now, bacteria can survive extreme conditions, true or false? Yes, bacteria, and not just for the matter of bacteria, many of the microorganisms can survive extreme conditions. Now, this is the line which I was talking about. What is in soil becomes grass. It is growing as a grass from a seed. Then it becomes a cow, becomes you and me, and then becomes a soil again. So, when the plants or animals or humans die, microorganisms are going to help them break down, and then they are going to take it back into the soil in the form of nutrients. So, if these microbes don't occur, there would be lot of dead material just lying all over. Without microbes, the whole ecosystem would collapse. Okay, so microbes are definitely very important things. Now, let me explain you guys an interesting experiment, and actually I'm going to do it and show it to you. So I have taken here some sugar, okay, and I took some sugar and I added some yeast and some water to it, and I nicely stir it well and then leave it like for 2 to 3 days, okay, and you can leave further also. Then try smelling it after few days. It will be really a peculiar smell and really a yucky smell, and that is nothing but the alcohol. So how did the sugar turn into alcohol? Sugar has turned into alcohol because of this microbe yeast. Okay, so this process is called as fermentation. Now, do you know who this scientist is over here? He is Alexander Fleming, and he is the one who discovered an antibiotic. And you know how he found out about this? He was just conducting an experiment, and he noticed that some cells are destroyed by the microbes which he was using on a petri dish. Like he was just performing an experiment, he had few microbes, he also had some normal cells. These microbes were killing these cells. And he was like, wow, so a microbe can actually kill the other cells. So why not use it to kill damaged cells or like infection, so that it will give us immunity. So that is how he found out about antibiotics. Isn't it interesting? So there are many experiments which are done which will lead, like a normal experiments will lead to a new discovery. So be anxious, be curious, and like notice everything around you. Like question, why do you think some plants grow only in some months? Why do you think they don't grow? Why do you think your cake gets spoiled? And what will happen if you don't add yeast in your bread? And what will happen if you don't have curd? So all these are small experiments which you can do in day-to-day life to like find out many facts about science. So let us talk about antibiotics in detail. Okay, so imagine that I have a viral fever. So would a doctor prescribe me antibiotic, or would he prescribe me an antiviral drug? You know what? antibiotics work only against bacterial infection. Okay, so if you have a sore throat or a viral fever, you don't go for antibiotics. Okay, so an antibiotic is a type of antimicrobial substance that is active against bacteria, and it is the most important type of antibacterial agent. So what does an antibiotic really do to a bacteria is, if suppose this is the bacteria that's causing me a bacterial infection, it will either kill it or it will stop its growth, like it won't grow further. Okay, so it can inhibit its growth or it can completely destroy its growth. So are we clear that antibiotics work only against bacterial infections? Okay, now coming to vaccine. So let me ask you guys a question. Are you all vaccinated for few things? Like definitely everyone might have taken polio vaccine, right? Why do you think we need vaccine? So I'll tell you an interesting story. So what happens is, suppose if this is the polio virus, okay, and it's going to infect me and I'm going to get polio and be crippled. So in order to prevent this whole situation, when this polio virus actually tries to infect me, and imagine that it's already infected me. Like let me just draw so that it's easy for you guys. So suppose think this is a polio virus. Okay, this polio virus has infected me. Okay, then this is called as antigen. That is a bad thing that is infecting my body. Once I'm infected with it, okay, what happens is, if I develop immunity and I get over the disease, my body gives something called as antibodies. It produces antibodies. So next time, suppose if I get the same disease, then what happens is, my body really knows how to protect myself. Like let me tell you an easy way. Suppose like right now about the coronavirus, right? Everyone is saying like donate your plasma. Did you ever get tested for COVID antibody tests and all of such things? So what happens is, imagine I'm a person who has suffered earlier with COVID. Okay, that is from coronavirus. So what happens now is, my body really knows when again COVID comes to me. Like suppose this is another coronavirus that's going to attack me. So my body will recognize it. It will say, hey, I have seen you earlier and you have attacked me, and now I am strong enough to just kick you one. Okay, so that is what is meant by antibodies. Okay, so vaccine is something similar to the antibody. So what is a vaccine is, we give a microbes that can do a similar action in preventing the disease before the disease kills us or affects us. Do you understand what I mean? Like right now the whole world is fighting for vaccine for corona. Of course it will be coming soon, but I'm just telling you. So we take polio vaccine in order to prevent the polio disease. And what is a vaccine? It is nothing but introducing a microbe in order to kill the disease, okay, so as to prevent the disease. Okay, so vaccine is a preventive measure that is taken in order to take care of the disease. Now, when a disease carrying microbe enters our body, okay, so this is that bad thing, disease causing microbe enters our body produces antibodies. Okay, now I will draw this like this. So our body produces antibodies to fight the invader. So this is going to fight the invader and kill the deadly thing. So our body, whenever a new similar organism will try to affect us, this will recognize that, hey, I have met a similar kind of you before and I have killed it. Same way, I am going to destroy you or make you weak. So our body has its own like immunity to fight back if it sees something similar. Okay. So what does vaccine do is, Vaccine is nothing but a dead or a weakened microbe that is introduced into a healthy body. Like this is a body that has never been affected with this organism. Okay. So suppose think this is a normal healthy body and this is deadly poliovirus. So what is a vaccine means? A vaccine is nothing but a dead or a weakened virus. Okay, dead or a weakened virus that is introduced into the body so that the person develops immunity. Okay guys. So there the doctor is giving polio drops to that kid over there so that the kid will have immunity against the polio virus. So if a polio virus is going to come to her, so inside there is a weak or like a dead organism which is being injected in the form of a vaccine. It will say that, hey, I recognize you, I have seen you earlier, now I am going to destroy you because I have the strength. Okay, so vaccine is like the energy booster. Now, coming to the role of the microbes in soil fertility. Till now we have learned that microbes are useful in fermentation, in making alcohol, wines, it's used in antibiotics, it's used in vaccines, it's also used in soil fertility. Imagine the whole world with all dead animals, dead humans, dead plants lying around there. If these microbes don't exist, there is no way that these can decompose. Okay, so microbes play an important role in soil fertility by the process of decomposition. Okay, so what happens here is the dead and decaying matter are decomposed, due to which this microbe feeds on the dead particles and it will destroy it and then give it back into the soil, and that soil becomes nutrient rich for the plants to grow. Isn't it interesting, like what is dead is also being used by the microbes. Okay, so definitely microbes play a good role also. Now coming to what is pathogen. So pathogen means the microbes can be really harmful in some ways. Like for example, you might have heard about tuberculosis, right? That is spread through cough, and that is a deadly disease which is caused by a bacterium called as Mycobacterium tuberculi. So this Mycobacterium is definitely not a good one. It's going to cause tuberculosis. So pathogen can be defined as a microorganism that is very harmful to humans. Okay. So microorganisms that are harmful in many ways and can cause diseases in humans, plants and animals are called as pathogens. Okay. So microorganisms can be useful as well as harmful. When they are harmful and are going to cause diseases, they are called as pathogens. Okay. So if someone asks you to name some microorganisms that are pathogens, one example is Mycobacterium, okay, and Salmonella typhi, which causes typhoid fever, okay, Vibrio cholerae, which causes cholera. So there are many things. Klebsiella causes pneumonia, and Candida causes candidiasis, which is a fungal infection. So basically there are many. Okay, but you just for remembering, remember two things. Mycobacterium causes tuberculosis and Salmonella typhi. Okay. Now coming to communicable and non-communicable diseases. I have an interesting question for you guys. Is coronavirus a communicable disease? Yes. You can just close your eyes and say this answer. Yes, it is a communicable disease. That's why we need to isolate ourselves and be far from everyone, whomever you think like might be a suspect for this disease. Like here, this person is coughing and this person over here is running away from this person because he's coughing. So those droplets might fall on the person, and if he's having any virus, those droplets will transmit. and then it will affect a normal healthy individual also. So communicable diseases are the diseases that spread from one person to another, whereas non-communicable diseases are the diseases that do not spread from one person to another. Like, let it be heart disease, let it be blood pressure, let it be cancer, let it be any eye disease. So any of such things are non-communicable. So communicable diseases are the diseases that spread from one person to the another, and non-communicable diseases are the diseases that do not spread from one person to the another. So some examples of communicable diseases are HIV, hepatitis, and of course coronavirus. And non-communicable diseases are cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and diabetes. Okay, so I hope you have understood till now what are the types of microorganisms, how are they used, what are the commercial uses. They are used in making of wine, bread, and what is the medicinal purposes, as well as what is meant by pathogen and differences between communicable and non-communicable diseases. In my next class, we are going to go in detail about these microorganisms. I hope you guys have had a clear understanding about microbes. So now I would like to ask you guys a question. Is the microbe your friend or is it a foe? Microorganisms can be your friend as well as can be your foe. Okay, so thanks for watching and stay tuned to Classroom TV for the next class.